All right, everybody. Hi, welcome. I'm Kathleen Jasper, and I'm so excited that you're here with us today for our How to Study for the Praxis Core webinar. Now, this thing is 3 big sections, and we're going to be talking about the math, the writing, and the reading. I'm actually going to work backwards. There is a study plan that goes with this webinar. So you're going to want to download that, and it's in the descriptions wherever you're watching this. And if you're live on Zoom, it is in the chat, okay? But again, don't worry about downloading this and printing it out right this second. I'd rather you be engaged with the webinar and then worry about that later. I'm going to project everything up on my screen. So it's going to be fine even if you don't have the study plan in front of you. Some people like the study plan. Some people just want to use the video. Some people want to use the both of them at the same time. So just remember that it's all good. However you want to do that is fine, okay? All right, so this is not going to be focused on math problems or writing problems or essay. I have a bunch of webinars that do that, okay? What this is going to do is focus on how to use the book. Now you may have the physical book, you may have the digital book. I'm gonna post the digitals up here because it's easier for me to present that way. And I'm also gonna present the individual subtests, and that will become clearer in a minute. So I'm gonna show you how to navigate this test, how to study for it, and all of that. If you're commenting on Facebook or in the chat, I'm gonna look at comments in between each section. I can't answer comments while I'm presenting because I have ADD, and I will be off in La La Land. The other thing is I'm gonna try to keep this to under an hour, but like you guys, I am a public school teacher and I don't like to end things until everything has been covered. So, it could go over. It usually goes over. So if you can't attend for any longer than an hour, fine. You can just come back and watch the replay, and you'll get all the information. So don't worry about that. All right. So let's go ahead. I'm going to share my screen. Let me make sure I got the right stuff going on here. Remember, just like in the classroom, we want to start with objectives. It's really important because it helps to guide instruction and helps you all know what you're responsible for and what I'm responsible for this presentation. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to review the structure of the exam. And that's going to play out in the table of contents, really. I'm not going to go through the study companion because the book mirrors the study companion. So there's no sense of doing it twice. I'm going to do it once. Then I'm going to review the structure of the study guide in terms of practice tests and where the answer explanations and all of that, all of the resources in the book that can help you. The third thing we're going to do, I'm going to show you how to measure your strengths and weaknesses in each subtest. This is key. Just like as a teacher, you do this with your students, right? You're going to measure where they are right now, and then you're going to teach, and then you're going to measure where they are after the lesson. Well, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to show you how to do that for yourselves in the book. The fourth thing we're going to do is evaluate strategies to strengthen skills in all areas. So I'm going to show you kind of how to hone in on those strategies. And then I'm going to show you how to use the NaviEd study guide to think like a test maker. I often say this. Think like a test maker, not a test taker. That's really, really important because if you are not being strategic, you're going to get bogged down, time's going to run out, and you're going to feel overwhelmed. So you got to put that test maker brain in your head, and I'm going to show you how to do that. And then we're going to, at the end, I'm going to show you some additional resources, free and paid, that you can use along with this webinar and with your book, or maybe you didn't buy the book. Maybe you have your own study guide that you bought already and you're on a budget. Either way, I'm going to show you some other helpful resources that you can use along with this, okay? So I'm always about using multiple resources to get there, all right? So let's just talk about the study guide very, very quickly, all right? Now, this pretty much goes for any study guide out there. So if you went to the library and you checked out a study guide, totally fine. If you bought another company's study guide before you found NaviEd, totally fine. It's all good. Obviously, we recommend our resources, but there are lots of resources out there and you may already have one. But typically in all study guides, all content categories should be covered. So maybe before purchasing a study guide, you want to make sure of that. Our book goes in the order of the study companion, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. There are also several areas that contain practice test questions. We don't just have the practice tests at the end, we have incremental practice tests that are very important in measuring your skills. And I'm going to show you how to use those effectively in a second. And then we have the full practice tests here with these answer explanations, guys. The answer explanations are like a whole other book inside of the book. And I recommend, even when you get something correct, I would still look at the answer explanations because there might be something in there that even gives you more insight. So we work really hard on the answer explanations. I think this is an area where most books fall short. And we want to make sure you really understand why you got something correct and why you got something incorrect. So really take a look at those. I'm going to show you how to use those pre and post tests in the book, just like you would as a teacher for your students. You got to do the same for yourself. We often forget about that when we're talking about ourselves. And then I'm going to show you how to use the essay prompts in the writing and the reading prompts, okay? All right, and I am actually going to work a little bit backwards today. I'm going to start with math today because it is the biggest section, and then I'm going to go to writing, and then I'm going to go to reading. Only because math is so big, and I have a feeling a lot of you are here because of math, and that is from our data. We are a data-driven company, just like I tell you to be a data-driven person in your classroom. We looked at the data, and math is where it's at. That's why we do so many math things, but we're going to cover everything today, so don't worry. So this is the study plan here. Let me close this out. This is a PDF document. Again, I'm starting with the math, but it does start with, it goes in order: reading, writing, and math. Now, this is a download that goes with this webinar. It's in the chat if you're on Zoom, and it's in the description on YouTube, in Facebook, all of that. Don't worry about it right now. You can get it later. Let's just talk about it, okay? Let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can see. So we're going to start with math, and I'm going to show you how to take the pre-test and post-test, and then I'm going to show you a suggested study plan. Now, this is suggested. It may take you longer. It may take you less time. This is just suggested based on what we know, okay? Now let's just break down the book really quickly so you can see what's going on. So you guys may have the full book, which is all the subtests, or some of you may have just purchased one digital piece, either the math or the writing or the reading. That's fine. I'm not going to talk too much about page numbers because depending on which thing you bought, it's going to be different page numbers. I'm going to talk more in sections and all of that. So you may just want to watch this video and then go back and watch it again and try to find the page number, because I'm going to move pretty quickly in terms of that. I'm going to use the table of contents here. Now this is the full book, and then I'm going to get into the sections of the book, okay? So notice that it goes in the order of the study companion. Your first subtest is going to be reading. Your second subtest is going to be writing, and your third subtest is going to be math. This is a beast of a test. This is huge. It takes several hours to complete, and it's going to take you several weeks to study for if you're going to do it properly, okay? So let's just get that out of the way right now. It's a beast, and we just got to settle in and work on our skills, and that's okay, all right? Now with the reading, there are 3 main content categories assessed on pretty much every reading test: key ideas and details, craft and structure, and integration of knowledge and ideas. And then our study guide has 2 full practice tests with answer explanations, okay? So most reading tests, whether it's ACT, SAT, GRE, FTCE, Praxis Core, whatever test you're taking, if it is a reading comprehension test, it is always going to cover these skills right here, all right? So that's really, really important. And then of course we have the practice tests here. Writing is a little bit different. For writing, you start with these essays. You're going to have an argumentative essay right here, writing arguments. And then you're going to have what people like to call the source-based essay. However, it's really called the explanatory text, but most people call it source-based, and I'll show you why in a minute. And then you have a big multiple choice test, A, B, C, and D, on grammar skills, like where do you put the comma, is this the right word, who and whom, pronoun antecedent agreement, things like that, okay? And then finally, after you're totally fatigued and your brain is about to fall out of your head, you get hit with the math. And the math, and most math, standardized math tests assess these 3 things, and you'll see them here: numbers and quantity, Data interpretation, stats and probability, normally called probability and stats. That's going to be your graphs. How many, if there are 18 marbles in a bag, what's your probability of choosing a blue marble? Those types of questions. And then algebra and geometry. Almost every single standardized math test, unless it's like a standardized calculus test or a high-level test, are going to assess these three things. I say that because you can go out into the internet if you need more information and even use practice tests for other tests like ACT, SAT to help if you want more practice test questions. Now we have a lot. We have 3 practice tests here with answer explanations, and we have practice problems in between each thing here. That's really important too. Notice for numbers and quantity, we have numbers and quantity practice problems just for numbers and quantity. Then we have data interpretation, representation, and statistics. Then we have practice problems just for that. And then we have algebra and geometry, and then we have practice problems just for those questions. So really, all in all, we have a ton of practice problems here. The same goes for writing. In the multiple choice section, look here, we have grammatical relationships, and then we have practice problems just for grammatical relationships. Then structural, just problems for structural, then word choice, mechanics, and then research skills, all the same thing, practice problems that are just for that. And then we have 2 full practice tests here. So you're talking hundreds of practice problems, all right? And then reading's a little bit different because they're reading passages, not just, random problems. We have 2 full reading practice tests here, and I'm going to talk more about how you can do that. Now, I want to have a quick conversation about practice tests and things like this. This is very important when you're studying for a test like the Praxis Core, all right? When it comes to Praxis Core or anything, Florida tests, Texas has its own tests, things like that. The skills-based test, like the Praxis Core, is about your skills. You cannot memorize test questions and content and think you're going to do well. It just isn't going to happen because it's a skills test. You don't know what reading passage you're going to get. You don't know what math problems you're going to get. It could be assessed in many, many different ways, okay? Now, a content area test or a subject area test like the social science test or the science test or let's say even the special education test, that's content driven. And you can memorize, what is an atom? What's an electron? What are the first 10 amendments of the US Constitution? Those are things you can memorize and then regurgitate them on an exam. But this is a different test. You have to practice the skills. And I get so many emails from people and they're like, I've taken the test 6 times and I have every study guide out there and I've done everything. Well, you're probably not studying the skills. So today I'm really going to show you how to do that and measure your skills, all right? So I just want to be clear on that. Memorizing practice test questions is not going to help you on this exam or really any exam because you never know what exam you're going to get. There are large item banks with tons of items in the item banks. There are different forms of the exam. And I often hear people say, well, why don't they just give the same form of the test? Well, that would be really ridiculous, wouldn't it? Put yourself as a teacher. Would you give the same test over and over again to your first period, second period, third period? By the time lunch rolls around, 5th period's getting 100%. Why? Because everybody talked to everybody about the test. It's just a natural thing that people do. So there are different forms for test security and there are different forms for test reliability. And that's just the way it is. No one's going to give the same test over and over again. And you shouldn't either as a teacher if you want really good, reliable exams. So that's my little pep talk on the test. We want to work on skills, not just practice tests. Practice tests are amazing to measure your skills, but you got to get the skills down first in order to be successful. All right.